Welcome to Coffee and Sports, the morning show here on Sports Empire Network. As always, it is the place to be every single morning. Get your sports day started off on the right foot. As always, I am joined by my partner in crime, Mo Better. Mo, how is it going this morning, sir?
Doing great on a Monday, getting ready to talk sports, telling everybody out there in the chat, have your coffee, get these sports.
Not only is it Monday, Mo, it is an NFL Monday here on Coffee and Sports. And let's start off by quickly going around the league. Couple of quick updates for all of our listeners and our viewers this morning. We're going to start in Buffalo. Quarterback Matt Barkley, after the disastrous performance that was the preseason yesterday. I don't know how Matt Barkley is still a backup quarterback in this league, but hey, good for him. Get your bag, support your people. I take it. I get it. He has an elbow injury, but he is considered day-to-day, according to head coach Sean McDermott. Not as great news, though, for offensive lineman Tommy Doyle, who is out for the season after suffering a knee injury against the Steelers. If we go over to the Carolina Panthers, cornerback Troy Hill and the Panthers have agreed to terms on a deal, adding some depth over there. In Cleveland, wide receiver Elijah Moore, he had a rib injury. He returned to practice on Sunday. Good news over there for him. Houston Texans are riddled in injuries following their preseason game against the Miami Dolphins. So much injuries on both sides of the ball, in fact, that the Texans have talked to the Saints and they have canceled their joint practice sessions for this week. The Houston Texans just simply felt it wouldn't be productive for them or for the Saints, given what they would put on the field in those joint practice sessions. So as a result, those teams are going to do their own thing this week leading up to their third preseason game. Good news if you are a Colts fan. Running back Jonathan Taylor will travel with the Colts to Philadelphia ahead of their preseason finale against the Eagles. This is per their head coach. Taylor had previously taken an excused leave of absence and remains on the PUP list while rehabbing his surgically repaired ankle. Obviously, a couple of scares around the league injury-wise this past weekend. Because of that, the New England Patriots have canceled their joint practice sessions with the Tennessee Titans this week. They will also do their own thing ahead of their third preseason game. Somewhat surprising, Mo, we have retirement news, preseason retirement news. Linebacker Miles Jack has informed the Eagles that he does indeed intend to retire from the NFL. Jack played in the NFL for 7 seasons. He is currently a Philadelphia Eagle, but he has put in his paperwork. The Tennessee Titans have cut defensive back A.J. Moore. The Washington Commanders have signed defensive tackle Isaiah Mack and punter Michael Pilardi. They have also cut wide receiver Jalen Sample and kicker Michael Bagley. And that's catching up in the NFL this morning with Coffee and Sports. So, Mo, without further ado, let's kind of jump right into it. And let's start off with the NFL and Cincinnati Bengals running back Joe Mixon. Apparently, his relationship with the Cincinnati media and the national media is, I guess you would call it, hot and cold. And apparently it is colder with some media members to the point where he is openly shunning some of the NFL media because he feels that they have disrespected him or they don't treat him the way that he wishes to be treated. Now, not a lot of information has come out as far as what these reporters or these media members have done to him to irk him in this manner. But he is open to the fact that, he will only answer questions from certain media and he will only conduct interviews with certain media. Mo, now, I get it. If there is a member of the media who's on you, who is blatantly being disrespectful, as an athlete, as a professional, as a human being, you have a right to choose not to interact with them. But at the same time, is this something that you have to look at where does there need to be a certain level of the league kind of saying, okay, we understand what happened. We're on your side. By all means, maybe you shouldn't be going around, boasting that you're not going to talk to the certain members of the media, but we understand the issues that you have. So we got you. don't do business with them, and we'll figure it out. And, maybe figuring out is the NFL does something on the back end as far as that media having credentials, to be around the team or whatnot. But Mo, I'm a little not concerned, but I'm curious because we see week in and week out media members push the buttons of NFL stars, and not necessarily because they're trying to be disrespectful or not necessarily because they don't like them, but because they're asking hard questions. Because, there are certain people in this league who don't like to answer questions. And we see it a lot with coaches, but we see members of the media come back and ask the same question over again because, they didn't get the answer they wanted the first time, or the person kind of sidestepped the answer the first time. So they kind of keep that pressure on. And I don't know what happened necessarily with Joe Mixon and this media person or these media people. But my question to you, Mo, is can the league just allow players to pick and choose who they do and do not want to associate with in the media? Because doesn't that potentially open the door to athletes or coaches or whoever it is doing the same? And, so you use the term disrespect. And I could argue, Mo, that once I give you an answer and you come back and you press again, that's disrespectful. I already gave you the answer. I answered your question. Just because you don't like the answer doesn't give you a right to press me to get a better answer. That's disrespectful. Is this opening a door potentially to players and coaches just picking and choosing who they want to deal with the media? Or is this just a little blip that we're not going to be talking about in 3 weeks?
So I hope it's a blip. I do. I don't think the league is in a position where they can allow players to pick and choose the media members they're most comfortable with. Because if you're allowed to do that, then maybe you can just pick the 5 media members that have nothing but good things to say about you all the time, basically the Joe Mixon fan club. Then you're not going to get real questions. It's not going to be a real dialogue going back and forth. You play professional sports, and it's not just physical, it's emotional, and it's the media's job to try to get an answer, to try to get a response. Whether you're angry, upset, disappointed, they're engaging you, and they're saying, how did you feel about when you fumbled that ball in the fourth quarter, and do you think you cost your team the game with that? That's a tough question, but in fact, if you actually did fumble that ball and your team did lose, it's a fair question, and it might be upsetting to answer, but I don't think it's an out of bounds question. Out of bounds to me is when the questions kind of hinge towards being personal. And I think you can tell it's pretty obvious when a media member may or may not have a personal grievance with a certain player. But I think that in professional sports, like in the NBA, I think that even whether they want to speak or not, it's in the CBA that they have to at least come in there and even give vanilla answers, but they actually have to make an appearance on the podium to engage in some sort of way. I think the NFL, if they don't implement something like that, or they don't already have something like that in place, maybe they should try to ensure that. I don't think you want players being able to have that kind of power. I don't think you want coaches and others to be able to have that kind of power. Can you imagine? Look, Belichick comes in there now, and he barely speaks English in his post-game interviews. He grumbles, he growls, he talks very low, but he does just enough to nobody can complain. And we're kind of used to that. That's Bill. But if he could actually just walk in and go, I'm only talking to those 2 guys over there, and I'll talk to the rest of you later, that would create a problem. So I hope this is a blip. Look, what I do know of Joe Mixon is he's a really overly sensitive dude. He's always been that way. And if he feels like a media member has a problem with him, and I know there was some kind of off-season thing that happened with him on a personal level that he was cleared of, and maybe he thought that a certain media member or a couple of media outlets rode him a little too hard, or maybe they were quick to assume the results of that, and he felt some type of way. And I can actually understand that. But I don't think he can go on a media strike thing and just pick and choose who to have dialogue with back and forth. That to me, like you said, that would send us down a really bad course.
And like you said, Mo, I mean, I think back to that game last season with Zach Wilson, and he was complete garbage. and his defense was magnificent. I don't think his defense gave up a touchdown, or they only gave up 9 points or something. And he's sitting there at the podium, and the media member goes, "Do you think you cost your team the game?" And I get it. Like those kind of questions are awkward to be asked, right? And of course, we all remember he said no, and we were like, "Well, wait a minute, sir." But I get it. When you are a star of the team, or when you are at an impact position, right? Because obviously, I wouldn't say Zach Wilson's a star quarterback, but the quarterback position gets that scrutiny. Right. Names, running backs may not have the value that they had 10 or 15 years ago. But running backs are going to be asked questions because who's in charge of the running game? The running backs, right? So if you have a game where there was no running game, who are you going to talk to about that? The coach or the running back? So I totally get that. And to your point, I could see it happening with Bill Belichick walking in with those rules in place. And he just looks around the room and he goes, "I'm going to talk to Steve. I'm going to talk to Dan. I'm going to talk to Joe. The rest of you can just keep your hands down." Because that's the kind of move that he would pull. And it would have been a situation where he already sent each of them one question, and it was a question he already wanted to answer, and that's it. Because if you open that door, because let's be honest, you get that friction because you're held accountable. And holding people accountable at times can be uncomfortable. At times it can be awkward, but there's a point to it, right? And that has always been the relationship between the media and sports. At times it can be uncomfortable. At times it can be awkward. But at the end of the day, you're being held accountable for what took place, good or bad. And if you lose that relationship, if you lose that dynamic in a world in 2023 where, well, let's be honest, I mean, we just saw a couple of weeks ago, someone dropped it in our chat for the morning show. It was an interview with Andre Iguodala, and he was on a show. And you had former players who were sitting there with Iggy saying, we've talked to refs, and we know that we had to win by 15 tonight if we wanted to win by 1, because it's just the way the game is played. And as fans, we sit here and we're like, no, that's not. But, and we can have that discussion another morning, but that's the kind of stuff in sports where the water gets a little muddy, right? But then you have these moments, in post-game or pre-game where you have access to these coaches and these players, and you're getting what you hope is transparency, which is, you hope you're getting honest feedback. But if you were to take that away, and now that they're only talking to certain people, the next step is, well, if they're only talking to certain people and they can pick and choose who they're talking to, they're probably also picking and choosing their line of questioning, and they're picking and choosing the tone of the conversation. So once that happens, you lose all faith in the process. And now you're looking at it and you're thinking, oh, this is just a PR spin, which we get enough in sports, right? Like we get enough of the PR stuff. We really live for those honest, truthful moments, which really are few and far between today. And you're right. If that goes away, I don't even know what the world of sports looks like anymore, because now it literally just is, outside of the game itself, it just is a PR stunt. And at that point, that's not helping anybody. That's not helping us as fans. That's not helping the players and coaches. And that's certainly not helping the league. So I agree with you completely. I hope it's a blip. I hope that it's not something that we're going to see as becoming a trend in the NFL or any other league. And I hope this is the last time that we talk about it, because like you said, there are players and coaches who will take advantage of it.
And look, the media has a role in sports. Like, they're kind of the gatekeepers. So they're telling the story, right, of the sport. They're telling the story of everything good, everything bad, the great things, the magnificent things, the things that bring you sorrow, that make you angry. They have to ask those kind of questions. They have to have that kind of dialogue to actually tell the whole story. Everything that happens in sports isn't wonderful. It's real, it's emotional, and we as fans engage in it, and we have our own feelings about what happened, but the media tells the story. And whether you agree with them or not, I think that's their role. And when you take away their ability to be spontaneous and ask a question that no one saw coming, I think that's I think you kind of handcuff them. And I don't think you want that. I think you want real questions, real reactions, so long as it's in bounds.
And Mo, it's a relationship. It's a relationship, and with any relationship, you have to develop it, you have to work on it, and you have to take care of it if you want it to be a good relationship. And I think a really great example of that is Patrick Mahomes. Look at all the noise that Patrick Mahomes potentially has outside of football. He has a wife who at one point would post anything she wanted on social media, no filter. He has a brother who was in the same boat and now is in a bunch of legal issues. But what don't you see with Patrick Mahomes? You don't see him answering those same questions over and over again. You don't see him constantly answering questions about his wife or his brother. Why? Because he has what appears to be a good relationship with the Kansas City media. And although I'm sure he was asked those questions, he probably answered them in a way that the media members felt, okay, we asked it, he responded to it, and we're going to move on. We're not going to sit here and we're not going to keep digging and we're not going to keep pestering, because the media also, Mo, realizes they have to craft the relationship too. Because you don't want a situation where Patrick Mahomes starts cutting you out, right? You don't want a situation where, Patrick Mahomes goes to the league and says, hey, Tim is being a certain way. He's getting real personal, and because that's the last thing you want. So again, I don't, and like you said, it could have had to do with some of the off the field stuff that Mixon dealt with this offseason that, it looked really sticky at one point, ended up not being as sticky. It could have been that kind of stuff. We don't know. But again, hopefully it's not a situation where this becomes a trend in the league and it's just kind of a blip here as we head into the 2023 season. But Mo, I want to shift, and I touched on this yesterday morning on the Sunday morning drive, and I was really excited to bring it up with you today to kind of get your insight on it. We saw two scary injuries over the weekend with the New England Patriots and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And although looking at it today on Monday, a couple days later, thankfully both players are okay. Both players are out of the hospital and they're day-to-day and they're going to be back and they're good to go. But the image was very Hamlin-esque. The image of both benches of those teams clearing and coming to the field, surrounding their player on one knee, concerned faces, both players being stretchered off the field, talk of, extremities and whether or not they have feeling in their extremities, scary moments. And it was hard if you were watching either game to not be taken back to the Damar Hamlin situation. Easy. Now, obviously, with both cases, the updates were quick. They were filling us in on what was being reported from the field. We learned fairly quickly with both players that they had feeling in their extremities, and it looked like, shortly after them being carted off, that it wasn't going to be as bad as what happened with Hamlin, which is great. But the way the league handled both of those situations was not the same. In New England, their game was called. Preseason game in the fourth quarter. There was still almost an entire quarter to play. They decided, we're done. It's just a preseason game. Let's cancel it. Let's move on. In the other game, in the Tampa Bay game, end of the third quarter, a little more time left in the game, they did not do that. They played through the game. Now, I don't have an issue with either situation. I don't have an issue with them stopping the game and calling it. I don't have an issue with them taking as much time as they need in the field to do what they got to do, get everyone a breath and back together, and then finishing the game. I'm okay with both of those outcomes, Mo. What I struggle with is the fact that the outcomes were not the same. Because what that tells me is, in the wake of the Damar Hamlin situation, in which one of the biggest talking points, aside from his health, was how the league handled the behind-the-scenes business. Were they going to play? Were they not going to play? Who decided they weren't going to play? Was it actually the league? Or was it actually the players and coaches who said, regardless of what the league says, we're not coming back on the field? We have all those stories. We've heard different versions of it. We've heard Goodell backtrack and say, we were never actually going to put him back on the field. Feel however you want to feel about that. But fast forward to the preseason this weekend, and it's pretty clear the NFL doesn't have a set protocol in place, because both of these injuries in front of the fans played out in the exact same way. Benches cleared, there was concern, gurneyed off, emotions were high. We were talking about extremities, numbness, all that stuff. So the result of the injuries on TV, they were pretty equal. But then the league decides one game is canceled, one game is not. And maybe it wasn't the league. Maybe it was the NFL officials on the field in the Patriots game. Maybe they made that decision and the league was okay with it. And the officials in the Tampa Bay game, for whatever reason, didn't feel that needed to happen. Maybe it was the coaches. We don't quite have clarity as to why one game was canceled and the other wasn't. But Mo, as we go into the NFL season, doesn't there need to be some sort of roadmap for it? Because football is a violent sport. People are going to get hurt. And because of if it's a head or neck injury, you're always going to take that precaution, right? If a player goes down and they're knocked out on the field, you're usually going to see them carted off. The same way we saw these two gentlemen this weekend carted off, the same way that we saw Hamlin cart. I mean, don't bring the ambulance on, but you know what I mean. They're going to be carted off, right. And it's going to have that vibe to the injury. But my question for you, Mo, is what happens next? Do we cancel the game? Do we give them, 20 minutes to go back and kind of collect themselves and when we start up again? Doesn't the league need to have something in place for that situation so it's not on the whim of the coaches or the players? Because, again, I get it. If I'm an NFL official, I'm not going to be the guy that forces them to play if someone's seriously hurt. I'm not going to be that guy. I will always err on the side of cancel the game. Because at the end of the day, once I make that decision, I can always go back and say, I thought he was in a really bad spot, and life is bigger than football. And I always win that argument. I will always win the argument that life is bigger than football. So, but I don't think it should be up to a group of officials, right? Like, should that decision be in their hands? Where do you fall on this, Mo? Because there has to be something, right?
Chris, you bring up the best point and the biggest point. There is no universal protocol. You can tell by the way these two games were handled. And even going back to what happened with Hamlin, in the aftermath, there were so many different versions of who made the decision or who made the call and what was going on. Even the commissioner himself didn't deliver a clear message. So I think they need to get a protocol in place. It's a must that they get a protocol in place. And don't put it on the officials. Don't leave it at the official's discretion. Maybe you should treat this, make the protocol something very similar to a practice session and leave it at the discretion of both coaches. If both coaches can stand and come to a meeting and say, you know what, man, that's enough for today. What do you think? You're right. You're right. We're not going to risk further injury. Maybe the other team, like you alluded to earlier, is in the same position as the Texans, and they've got multiple injuries, and what they don't need to do is risk even more injuries. So at some point, you have to go, I got to think about the health of my players so that we can actually field a roster going into the season. But maybe just simply put it on the head coaches, because I think who knows more about their players, what's going on with their players, than the coaches and their assistant coaches and the doctors or the medical people who are down on the field or on the sidelines. I think combined, they can make that decision. They can make that call because they're actually there in the sidelines. I think that should be, I don't know how you go about implementing that protocol, but that should be the protocol. The people on the field, the players, the coaches, but more importantly, the coaches and the medical professionals, they should be able to make that call. They should say, that's enough, not just for that guy, but for both teams. Because remember, when you see a gruesome injury like that, Chris, it's not just a physical thing that you're witnessing. It's a mental thing. The players on the sideline, it is draining. It's emotional. It deflates the whole game. At some point, look, if it's not a playoff game or a must game where it's got to be a winner, like you said, you'll take life over football, health over football all day, every day. I'm with you 100%. But somebody's got to make that call. And I think that if the protocol is implemented, it should start with the head coaches.
And we've seen, let's take head injuries and neck injuries out of it, because those all look the same. A player goes down. It's sometimes hard to tell the seriousness of the injury. Take out Hamlin's situation because they were performing, life-saving measures on the field. But take Hamlin out of it. If you see a player go down and they're not moving, chances are, as long as they're conscious, that it's going to look the same. They're going to get them onto the board. They're going to strap them in. People are going to be around them praying and, well-wishing and taking a knee for them. And that could be whether the player is just, they were knocked out and they're actually going to be fine. Or it could be, if it was a far worse injury and, that they still can't feel their limbs or whatever the case might be. But for us as a fan, it looks the same because they're strapped in. We don't know the extent of it. We're hoping we see a thumbs up or something like that to show they can move their arms. That's what we're looking for. But if we don't get that, we don't know. We don't know how seriously they are hurt or they're not hurt. But take those out of it. We've seen guys break legs on the field. We've seen guys snap ankles. It's terrible. It's gruesome. It's disgusting. It's stomach churning when you see those kinds of injuries. Is it? I want to word this in a way that's sensitive. I'm not trying to. I'm not trying to get canceled on a Monday morning, Mo. But is the head stuff and the neck stuff, is that just viewed as more serious? Like when we see a guy break their leg and we're like, oh my God, did you see that? Is it because in our mind we go, it's a broken leg. He's not going to die from this. He's going to be fine. He's probably going to miss the season, but he's okay. Does our mind register that? Whereas you see someone who's strapped to the board, their neck is braced in, they may not be moving. Is it in that moment that we just go to a different place, especially now post Hamlin? And that's why you're seeing some of these reactions?
I think that's exactly what it is. I think that, like you said, what happens when a guy gets horse collared and he rips his knee from the horse collar? We know it's a gruesome injury, and we see the guy get carted off, but I don't think we lose our minds the way we do when we think it's a head or neck injury. All injuries are serious, so let's start there. But you're right. When it becomes a head or neck injury, I actually think that a lot of fans, when it becomes a head or neck injury, they don't think just injury. They're thinking life changing or altering, right? Like it's an imminent thing, and everybody goes to that level. I think we've actually trained ourselves mentally that way, that anything that concerns above the shoulders is life, and it could be life threatening. I've totally embraced that and understand that. But we've by being so emotional about head injuries and neck injuries, we've all almost brushed off when somebody twists a knee or breaks an ankle. And those are gruesome injuries that impact careers as well, but they don't seem to impact fans the way head and neck injuries do.
I agree. And I think it's just one of those things where we've kind of trained our minds to, right or wrong, judge the severity of an injury, and we react accordingly. And I think it's not just us as fans. I think that the players are kind of there. I think the coaches are there. I think the world as a whole, when it comes to NFL football, is kind of somewhere in that mindset. And that's why you saw a game get canceled in the preseason because of it. All right, Mo, let's try to jump and change emotions a little bit here.
Lighten it up a little bit.
We started deep this morning on the show. We were getting real deep in it. Let's talk about the Tennessee Titans. So coming out, and we're later on in the show, we're going to talk about feel-good quarterbacks, because isn't that the trend in the NFL in the preseason? Everyone's talking about how good people look or how good we feel about people. And coming out of the preseason this weekend, the second week of the NFL preseason, I was caught. I was surprised by some of the headlines that I was seeing from beat reporters in Tennessee. And all of these headlines were praising young Malik Willis. And I said to myself, well, hang on, because I caught part of the Titan game. And the part that I caught, I said to myself, well, same old Malik Willis. So then I was like, hot damn, what did I miss? Did the kid light it up and I changed the channel? So I had to go back and I had to watch some of the highlights and I had to look at the box score. And Mo, I'm a little confused this morning, because here's how it kind of shook out. Malik Willis went 10 for 17. So that's just above 50% completion percentage. He threw a touchdown. Great. He also threw an interception. He didn't pass for 100 yards. He passed for 80-something yards, I believe. He ran the ball 13 times for about 90 yards. That's nice. He also had a fumble. They got it back, so he didn't lose the fumble, but he still had a fumble. And that was the game. He played the entire game. 10 for 17, less than 100 yards, touchdown and a pick, 91 yards rushing on 13 carries. He had a fumble. There's some good stuff in there, Mo, but at the same time, he was a lucky bounce away from 2 turnovers. He still is having some accuracy issues. He still is a run-first quarterback, clearly, and not a pass-first quarterback. When you sit here and you break down the passing numbers, I don't know if you want any quarterback to be playing an entire game, dropping back 17 times, and he only has 80-something passing yards. That's not going to work in the NFL today. I understand that he's not competing for the starting quarterback job. He's competing for the backup of Ryan Tannehill. But we saw Tannehill get hurt a lot last year. He had some nagging injury issues. He isn't getting older. His body's breaking down a little bit. It's possible that whoever wins this backup quarterback job between Malik Willis and Will Levis is going to start some games. Did you see enough to where you're sitting here Monday morning, coffee and sports, and you're like, man, Malik's the guy. He is the backup. Wrap it up. Will who? No. He's going to be the emergency quarterback in case they make it to the playoffs and they need another guy. But is Malik the guy now?
So I probably watched a little bit more of the game than you did. And to be fair to Malik Willis, he had about 3 or 4 drop passes, and they weren't bad. I mean, they were good passes. They were just drop passes. So he did some good things out there. I don't think that he took it to another level. Like, I've seen Malik Willis play before, and what I saw for an extended period of time was just more of the same. So you know that he's athletic. You know that he has wheels, but you also know that he's known for throwing into coverage because he can't really read. He still can't read defenses and recognizes when they switch up coverages. So that's a struggle for him. He doesn't really go through his reads. If he's got a number one, he's looking at number one too long before he goes to the other progressions. So do I think he's improved? Sure. Do I think that the beat writers are kind of hyping him up? I do. But I also think that they're hyping him up because the Tennessee coaching staff is telling them to hype him up. I think what the Tennessee coaching staff is trying to do is build up Malik Willis's confidence, because if you know anything about Malik Willis and saw what he did last year, preseason, anytime he got an opportunity, he was really bad. He looked like he had no confidence. You could have made an argument he didn't belong in the league. So I think when you set a really low bar and he crosses it, yeah, give him credit for that. No, he's not competing for QB1, but QB2 in this NFL is just as important, because very few QB1s make it through a 17-game season without missing a few games. So your backup quarterback is very important. He's got to be able to hold the fort, maybe not go 4-0 in a 4-game stretch, but go 2-2 worst case scenario. Just hold the fort down till QB1 can get back. Malik Willis is playing for a very important roster spot. I thought he looked solid, but I'm like you. I don't think Malik's the man suddenly. I don't think like Ryan Tannehill's looking over his shoulder like, I'm in trouble. I'm in trouble if I miss some time. I would argue that right now, that battle between he and Will Levis, it's dead even. It's dead even. And I would actually give Will Levis the edge. And I have nothing against Malik Willis. I will say this. He is going to be a guy that's going to play in the NFL for 8 to 10 years in some role, maybe a backup most of his career, but he will have an NFL career. I just don't know if his future is with the Titans.
You bring up a great point, because let's not forget, more than half the league started a second quarterback last year. More than half. And I think it was closer to 2. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I'm pretty sure it was closer to 2/3. Because I remember pulling stats last year when people were hating on Tua and their backup quarterback situation, acting like Miami's the only team that has a starting quarterback injury. So I was looking up numbers, and at the time, it was more than half the league started their backup quarterback for at least one game. So to your point, backup quarterbacks in this league start games, and they start games on a regular basis. Right. And it's not just because guys are getting demoted. It's because of injuries. And when it's a 17-game season and the schedule is brutal and the wear and tear, it happens. People miss a game here and there. So the backup role is incredibly important. But Mo, are they doing a lot of things at once here? I like how you talked about building up his confidence, because you're right. I mean, there were times last season where my best friend's a Tennessee Titan fan. So when the Titans are in prime time, I'll watch the games. We'll FaceTime or we're texting back and forth. And then, we just do that for each other. And I watched 2 Titan games last year that Malik Willis start. It was brutal. I mean, I'm literally sitting here like, is this the guy? Like, you were so hyped when they drew up. What is happening here? Is your offense just this bad? Like, I was asking all these questions. I don't follow Tennessee football, but I'm sitting here watching this and I'm like, what am I looking at? Why is the offense this bad? So I get it. The guy needs confidence. But you also just said that if you had to give the edge, you would give the edge to Will Levis, which means that they're not necessarily hyping him because they're trying to get people to wrap their idea around him beating out Will Levis. So maybe they're hyping him not only for his confidence, but are they hyping him so other teams want him? Are they trying to build Willis a trade market so that in a week or a week and a half, when, they start making phone calls, hey, saw your quarterback room looks like this. We got Malik Willis. Are you interested? That a team might be like, oh my God, yes.
That's exactly what I think. I think that, they're not going to say that to him, but as I'm watching him, I feel like he was auditioning for the other teams. That's what I felt like. And to your point, you've seen Malik Willis play. Your friend who loves Tennessee has probably seen more than enough of him. Watching Malik Willis play, here's the thing that he does almost constantly. When he drops back to pass, he makes one read and then he takes off and runs. Like he's thinking run probably as soon as the ball is snapped, and he's just really impatient and not comfortable in the pocket. His default is to take off and run. And I just think that those are the kind of things, that's his instinct. You can't make a guy be calm under pressure. Everybody can't be Peyton Manning, who isn't very mobile, but can sit there in the pocket knowing he's going to get blasted and make that pass right before he gets hit. Not everybody's cut out like that. Being a great athlete, to me, sometimes to a default, hurts some of these younger guys because their instinct is, I'll use my wheels, I'll take off. And maybe it does work and it's effective to a degree. They'll get a couple of first downs here and there. But if you're constantly taking off when you drop back, you're never really learning how to play the position of quarterback. You're just an exceptional athlete. And I think that his first couple of years in the NFL has shown Malik Willis is an exceptional athlete with a decent arm, but he hasn't learned how to play quarterback yet.
And I love that you bring that up because we do this a lot in basketball. We'll look at the entire sport of basketball from middle school all the way up to the NBA. And we have no issue taking shots at AAU. We have no issues taking shots at high school coaching. We have no issues taking shots at some college programs, talking about the foundations and how, depending on your path to the league, you may not have been in a situation where you were expected to be a foundational player until you got to your college program. And at that point, you're 18, 19 years old. You've been playing basketball for the last, 10 years of your life. And now someone's trying to teach you the basics of a sport when you know you're about to be in the NBA in a year. Like, it's crazy to think about that. But Mo, I would argue the same thing for the quarterback position, because what do you see in middle school and high school and to some level in college? If you see an athletically elite quarterback who can run, who can do things, who is special with his legs, that's all you see. You go and you watch high school football. If that quarterback is gifted with his legs, he's running all day. You got high school football quarterbacks putting up 200-300 yards rushing a game because they do what Malik Willis does. They drop back and they have one read. And if the read's not there, they know they can pick up 8 to 15 yards a clip by taking off and running the ball. And then you get to some college programs or some junior college programs, and it's the same because they're just that elite compared to the other talent on the field. And then you get them into the NFL, and it doesn't work like that anymore. Because, yeah, you're right, Mo. He can probably pick up 5 or 6 yards at will. And depending on what's set up in front of him, he's going to have some of those big gash plays. But every time he runs, what happens? He gets hit. Every time he gets hit, that takes some wear and tear on his body. Because when you're looking at the college side of it, or you're looking at the high school or the middle school side of it, they're getting out of bounds or they're scoring touchdowns.
Right.
They're not getting hit nearly as much on those runs because no one can catch them. No one's touching them. So, they're taking off 35, 45 yards down the field, and they see the hit coming. And at that point, they're like, well, I'm not going to get hit. I just ran for 40 yards. Right. So they just scamper out. They celebrate. They're taunting. They're doing their thing. They're living their best life. And that's how they're learning the position of quarterback. So it's not until they get into a decent college program where someone's like, listen, I've seen your highlights. You've been killing it the last 7-8 years, but we got to teach you how to throw the ball. We got to teach you how to read a defense. Right. We got to teach you that there's such thing as a second, third, and dare I say it, fourth read. And then you turn on the film of a Peyton Manning or a Tom Brady. Watch their eyes. Watch Tom Brady scan the left all the way across to the right, and then he starts moving backwards. And he's doing all of this in 3 or 4 seconds. Like, he's darting back and forth because he knows where everyone. That's a lot. And you're seeing guys come into the league. I mean, look at Trey Lance. And I talked about this yesterday in the Sunday morning drive. I know that Lance has not played a lot of football, Mo. I know that if you and Gene had a great stat yesterday on the Sunday morning drive where he talked about how if you take all of the attempts that Trey Lance has in his football career, high school, college, preseason, regular season, NFL, it doesn't even match up to one season from Josh Allen. Like, that's the lack of opportunity that he has had, not just in the league, but just being a quarterback.
That's a crazy stat.
Right. So you look at a guy like Trey Lance, who just hasn't had a chance to learn to be a quarterback. So, of course, he's going to rely on his natural God-given athletic ability because when all else fails, do what God gave you. And when God gives you wheels and God gives you the ability to get out of the pocket and pick up a first down, that's what you're going to do. But, Mo, am I being hyperbolic, or is there anything to the fact that maybe these guys just aren't being prepared enough? Because look at 15 years ago, there wasn't all these special quarterback camps. You look at the high school athlete or the talented middle school athlete today. Football is almost a year-round thing. They're going to these special quarterback camps in the summer. They're playing ball with their high school or middle school teams in the fall. They're doing special camps in the winter to work on their skill and to work on their arm strength. And it's a whole year thing now. But despite that, we still see guys that are run first. So is it a bigger problem than I'm making it out to be? Am I just talking too much over here? What do you think?
No, I think you're right. I think that these guys that have been dominant elite athletes, junior high, high school, and maybe they go to a college program that says, we see what you've done. We're going to build an offense around what you do best. We're going to do a lot of RPO, and we're going to give you 2 reads. If they're not open, take off. And that can work. That can work. Look, that can work to a degree even in the NFL. When Michael Vick was in his prime in Atlanta, he had 1 or 2 reads. He looked to the slant, or he looked at Algie Crumpler in the seams, and then he took off running. Most of the time, and I know I joke about this a lot in the NBA with Jackson Hayes, but if you watch the Atlanta Falcons play, most of the time their wide receivers, they were just getting good cardio. Their jobs was to run deep routes and run as far down the field as you can, because while you're running with the DB, Michael Vick's running behind you. Like, he's running the ball. Like, their best run plays were pass plays. He got away with that because he was an exceptional elite athlete, but in time, that does catch up with you. And there is a ceiling on the success you can have playing that position, just being an elite athlete. There is. Even now, right now, as gifted as Lamar Jackson is as a playmaker, and you definitely could say if you're just ranking quarterbacks, he's a top 10 quarterback. That's not the same as saying he's one of the top 10 passers, but he is a top 10 quarterback because of his ability to make plays. I don't want anybody to confuse what I'm saying. There's other guys that can read defenses better, throw the football better, but in terms of his impact on a game, he's absolutely a top 10 quarterback. But if he's ever going to take the Ravens beyond where they've been, he's going to have to be better at passing the football. He's going to be better at going through his reads, because a quarterback that relies on his wheels, 9 times out of 10, I'm sure you can agree with this, their story normally never ends well. It never ends well. If you're a running quarterback, and nobody's ran like he's ran. I think he's a 2-time 1,000-yard quarterback on the ground. That's insane to even think about. But if you're going to rely on his legs, sooner or later, he's going to take that hit that we saw RG3 take, and then he won't be the same player ever again. So I think I don't think you're just going off the rails. I think you're 100% right. A lot of these guys have just been allowed to rely on their athleticism, and nobody bothered to teach them how to play the position of quarterback. And now you get these guys coming into the league. We're talking about Malik Willis. You mentioned Trey Lance. I'm a Niners fan. I root for Trey Lance, but when I watch him, you can tell sometimes he's confused. He doesn't. I know he instinctively, I know what he wants to do, but when they call the play, I don't see the guy that is ready to play the position yet. I look at Trey Lance and I almost feel like he should probably still be in college.
And when you look at the number of times he's thrown a football in a game setting in his life, he should probably be a guy that's still in college. I mean, it's mind-boggling when you think about someone who is a NFL quarterback, who was drafted to essentially be not just a starting quarterback, but a franchise, one of 32, franchise quarterback, and he's barely played the game of football. It's wild to think about. And Mo, you hit it right in the head. I mean, look at guys like Cam Newton. Cam Newton ran until he couldn't run anymore. And then when he couldn't run, what could he do? 55% passing completions, right? That's what he is. That's what he was. That's what he always was. He was always somewhere in that 55 to 60 range, and he was never a finesse guy. He was never an accuracy guy. He was never a touch guy. But what he was I got wheels and I'm big. So if you hit me, 3 yards from the sticks, I'm still going to get there. I'm going to drag you with me. Right. And it was great to watch, and the highlights were fantastic. And he had success doing it. But when it went away, it was gone because he didn't have the foundation to fall back on. And as crazy as this is, think about Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott was never known, seriously, he was never known as a running quarterback, but it was always part of his game. If you look at his first 3 years in the league, he ran for 200-300 yards. I think he averaged, 6 touchdowns his first couple of years in the league. His last couple of years, he's not moving. He's not getting rushing touchdowns. And you take a look at someone who it wasn't the focal point of their game, but it was part of it. And now it's not. And look at the struggles that he has had the past couple of years. Because what is he now? He is legitimately a pocket passer. There's not even a threat of him really moving that much because injuries have taken a toll on him. He's getting older, right? So that's just a quarterback where it wasn't the go-to option, and it's having an impact on him. Now you look at guys where it was the go-to option, and now they have to be a pocket passer, and it's a thing. It really is a thing, and I hope that we get better as, from a foundational stance of just, and it helps so much, Mo. It helps if a guy can't throw the football, he can't throw the football. It's okay, but you're getting these guys in the league because of they got this far because of their wheels, and everyone's a Kyle Shanahan, right? Everyone's I can fix him. I can refine him.
No shortage.
I can teach him how to throw. Like everyone is that guy. And unfortunately, that's just not the case. And we're seeing it. And we're seeing it with, whiffs in the league, and we're seeing it with, busts in the league. And yeah, they're a bust because they were drafted to be a starting quarterback, and they're not able to do that. But I would almost argue that some of these guys were a bust from the get-go, because you watch this tape and you say things like, oh, he's got to refine his throwing motion a little bit. He's about to be in the NFL. Why hasn't junior high, high school, and college got his motion to a point where he's good to go, right? Like, it's crazy. And we could talk about this for hours, but
you're so spot on about this. Like we literally could do a whole show on this. That's how deep this runs. So I'm with you 100% on this. We could talk about this all day, but it is a harsh reality of the NFL right now.
So Mo, I'm really excited. You and I have been talking about this for a couple of weeks now, and we're still going to do this. So I'm going to tell you what we are going to do. Then I'm going to tell you what we're going to do. And then I'm going to tell you how we're going to get back to what we were going to do. So, Mo, I know it's an adventure we're about to go on here, Mo. So, Mo came to me with this great idea, and it was centered around the NBA. And he wanted to do kind of like this March Madness style bracket for NBA players, and I loved it. And I was like, but hey, we're going into football season. Let's do quarterbacks, because everyone likes to talk quarterbacks. And Mo was like, yeah, hey, let's do it. So I'm sitting there trying to put this thing together over the weekend, and I'm struggling because the way I have it set up, I just keep going back to it's going to end up being Patrick Mahomes or Tom Brady. That's maybe we're going to have Montana in there, but there's like 3 guys or 4 guys that we're going to end up with. And I hate doing stuff that's big and awesome, but I know where we're going to end up at the end. So I was like, all right, let me scrap the quarterback thing for now and rework it and get back to it. And then I was like, but we still got to do something this week in the next couple of weeks, because this was the plan. Yeah. So we're going to do wide receivers, Mo. And what we're going to do is we're going to create a bracket, and we're going to take the greatest wide receiver duos from the last, I think we're going to go 30 years.
I love that.
That's going to give us a nice sample size of duos. And I understand the game has changed over the last 30 years, but I think if you take a wide receiver duo from 1993 and you put them in the league today, they're still going to do great things. They're probably going to do greater things because they're going to have more freedom in the offense to not be touched and hit. So they're probably going to be better than they were during their time. So a great wide receiver duo from 30 years ago is going to be just as great, if not better, today.
So now you're talking Swan and Stallworth?
Yeah. I mean, imagine what they could do in a league where people weren't checking them at the line, where they could go over the middle of the field and not have to worry about a safety just lighting them up.
Right. So there is no Jack Tatum, Ronnie Lott kill shot.
Right. Correct. So what we're going to ask our listeners to do, because we're going to revisit this throughout the week, we want you to hit us up with your favorite wide receiver duos.
Oh, yeah.
And you can do that in the chat. If you watch this later on YouTube, you can do it in the YouTube comments. You can just come visit us on our Facebook page and just leave a comment with just your wide receiver duo. Reach out to us on our social media accounts. But for the next couple of days, hit us with all of your favorite NFL wide receiver duos. And then what we're going to do is we're going to put them into a March Madness bracket. And then we're going to break it down. We'll break down a few brackets every single day. And it's going to take a few weeks to get there, but that's okay, because we want to give the proper love to everyone who is in our bracket. And whether it's 4, 5, or 6 weeks from now, we're going to crown a champion. And it's going to be the greatest wide receiver duo of all time. But it's not just going to be one of us making a list and saying whether we agree or disagree. Right. It's going to be an in-depth conversation where we involve all of you and we take in your perspectives. And hey, maybe we'll have some people on the show. If you are invested with a particular wide receiver duo and you got a great take, hit us with the take. And if we like it enough, if we like it enough, we might bring you on the morning show so you can defend your duo, because we're bringing people together over here. That's what we're doing here on Coffee and Sports. So come at us.
Family show, man.
It is a family show. So
go.
Come at us. Give us your wide receiver duos, and we're going to get cooking. We're going to get cooking later on this week, and we're going to be cooking for a while. So bring the takes, bring your opinions, because we're here for all of them.
Yeah.
All right, Mo, let's transition a little bit to UFC. Now, I'll be honest, UFC is not my forte, but I do love some Conor McGregor. I listen, I don't care about how he fares in fights. I've only seen 2 McGregor fights in my life, but I'm here for the trash talk. I'm just here for the nonsense. I'm here for the shenanigans. I'm literally waiting for him to pop up on Friday Night SmackDown. Like literally when WWE had the merger, my first thought was they're going to put Conor McGregor in a wrestling ring. They have to. The man is gold on the microphone. Let's let him come out, tell him he can't swear, or just have the bleep button ready. And you put him in the ring with a wrestler that can, the Miz on the mic or something crazy. Oh my God, it would be fantastic.
He's got mic skills.
He does. But that's not the point of the story. The point of the story is that Conor McGregor has said that he is not going to take a fight in 2023, which I think we were kind of aware. We're halfway through the year. Nothing's really come up. Nothing's really been talked about McGregor taking a fight this year. So I think UFC fans were probably already aware of the fact he wasn't going to fight this year, Mel. But my question to you, and again, we're both not huge UFC guys, but we know a little bit about the sport. Is he ever going to fight again? He hasn't. We've been so far removed from his last fight, and he's had legal issues. He's had personal issues. You know, he's been in the news for different things not related to him fighting. Have we kind of hit the point in his career where he's going to talk? He's going to say that, you know, if he got in there with somebody, he would do this, that, and the other thing to them. But is he ever actually going to fight in a real fight? Now, I'm not talking about, you know, Logan Paul or Jake Paul comes along.
Then you ruined it. Then you ruined it.
And it's going to be this.
I think that's the only kind of thing he's going to do. I don't think Conor McGregor is going to compete against another serious ranked UFC fighter ever again. I think that if he gets in the ring again, it's more of a show, and it's against someone who's not a UFC guy. It might even be boxing. He's tried his hand at that, but I don't think as a serious UFC fighter, I think his days of competing at that level, I think that's over. Right now, Chris, I think he's more interested in talking smack and putting on a show.
Now, Mo, he still, do you think he can still sell tickets? He's still a name. He's still entertaining.
I think he still has a strong following. I really do. I think he has a very strong following, and he's a convincing enough salesman when he speaks that if he says, I really want to hurt this guy and I really want to compete against them, even if he doesn't mean it, his fans will believe him. He's very believable. So I have no doubt that he's a draw. He like I said, he's gifted on the mic and he's got a strong following. So if and when he does engage in an event, because it'll be an event, it won't be an actual fight. It'll do big money. It'll do big money. There'll be no shortage of people that will watch. Look, I'd watch. I wouldn't pay for it. I'd go to a friend's house that'd pay for it, but I'd watch.
Hopefully that friend has good food.
Yeah. No doubt.
So, Mo, let's talk a little basketball. Team USA knocked off Germany. Come from behind win. All right. Anthony Edwards getting all sorts of praise, 34 points. He led the comeback for Team USA. He has really stepped up as the leader on this team in many different ways. But that being said, there's still a lot of hate out there for Team USA. And it's hate in the sense of, really, this is Team USA? Really? These are the guys who are the best that American basketball has to offer? And I get it. You know, if you look at Team USA and you were to create an all NBA team with current NBA talent, they're not necessarily going to stack up. I understand that. Is the current Team USA, the way it's comprised, in your opinion, Mo, are they talented enough to win the whole thing? That's my first question. And my second question, and we'll actually start with my second question. Although it was great to see them come from behind and beat Germany, should we be concerned that they had to come from behind to beat Germany? Because when you think Team USA basketball, let's be honest, you think blowouts. You think 30, 40-point victories. So I love the fact that they won the game. I love that Anthony Richards is getting a little bit of love. But at the same time, I'm looking at it. I'm sorry, Anthony Edwards. But at the same time, I'm looking at it and I'm like, but it was Germany. So why aren't we blowing Germany out? Am I wrong here? Like, how far do you think Team USA, as it's comprised, is going to go?
So I watched the game, and Germany had control of the game late. Like, Team USA they locked down on defense, and they ran a crazy, like, 20-3 run to walk them down. And Anthony Edwards went crazy. I mean, he looked like the dominant player that he can be, but he had to go bananas for them to come from behind and catch Germany. And really what happened was they played a little bit better on defense, but Germany suddenly couldn't make a three. They were still getting open threes. They just weren't making them anymore. I don't know if that's going to happen against other countries who have better shooters and can sustain their attack. Like, do I think this team has the talent to win it all? Yes. But I also think they could get beat. They're not unbeatable. They're very vulnerable. So while they should be favored, they're not a lock. They're not a lock. And top to bottom, this is not the most talented team we've put together. And maybe it's our arrogance where we're like, well, we're still better than the rest of the world. We are when we put our very best out there, and you know for sure. When you put out some guys that are gifted players, but not the very best, you can lose. You can be beaten. So I don't doubt they have the talent to win it, but I wouldn't book it as a lock. Like there's some countries out there. Don't sleep on what Canada can do, Puerto Rico could do. There's some teams out there that some of the other European teams. They had last night against Germany. If they played Germany again, I don't know that Germany doesn't win that game. Like Germany just got on an insane cold streak, and never mind that they couldn't guard Edwards, but he was making tough contested shots. Like he wasn't making shots where it was run within the offense. This was all off his individual brilliance. And individual brilliance in an Olympic setting, that doesn't always win you games. That's not really how it works. So I like what they did. It's great that they came back, but I'm concerned that they had to come back. And I don't think they're locked to win at all. You always support Team USA, but this team is very vulnerable. It's very beatable. So I am concerned.
Now, Mo, I said in the beginning of the show, it's an NFL Monday here on Coffee and Sports, and I said we were going to circle back to the feel-good feelings that are just pulsating through the NFL right now. And I was looking at the headlines Saturday. I was looking at the headlines yesterday. And it's so funny because you take any team, whether there's any question about the quarterback situation, whether it be who is starting, whether it be coming back from an injury, whether it be they went to a new team, and the headlines all look the same. We feel great about this person. We feel good about this person. It was great to see this person do that. It's they're not really doing anything, Mo. They're in there for a drive or a drive and a half, but everyone is feeling good about their quarterbacks. So what we got here is we got a handful of quarterbacks that people were really feeling good about after this weekend. If you looked at their beat writers and their local reporters, and those quarterbacks are Tua from Miami, Purdy, and San Francisco's got two, Mo. Everyone's feeling good about Purdy and Trey Lance, so we'll get there in a second.
And don't forget Steve Young.
That's right. Well, they didn't talk about him. But Purdy and Trey Lance, everyone was feeling good about. Jimmy G, people were feeling good about. Daniel Jones, people were feeling good about. And Desmond Ridder, people were feeling good about. So, Gene, I'll start it off. And, I think we can take Tua and Purdy and even Jimmy G to a certain extent out of this conversation. Sure. Because I think that we kind of, even though I know with Purdy there's some question marks because can he do it again? But if all things were created equal last season, and in the case of Jimmy G and his career, I think we kind of know where those three quarterbacks are going to be. If Tua stays healthy, the Dolphins are probably competing for a playoff spot.
No question. If
Purdy doesn't fall off a cliff from where he was last year, the Niners are competing for a playoff spot in the division. And if Jimmy G is Jimmy G, he'll have decent numbers, but the Raiders will still be a dumpster fire because they're the Raiders.
Yeah, and
there's no talent on that team. But Jimmy G is still Jimmy G, so I'm not really concerned about him. But the other three, I think, are in a different boat. And the other three you have bigger questions about. Is Daniel Jones, Mr. 15-5, I got the bag. Is he going to be enough to get the Giants to contend for a playoff spot? Is Desmond Ridder the guy? We don't know. Is Trey Lance even going to be in San Francisco when the season begins? We don't know.
Good point.
But Mo, looking at all six of those quarterbacks, is there give me one you really feel good about to match the headlines, and give me another one that you don't know why those headlines were written.
So with Desmond Ridder, young, talented guy, you look, as an NFL fan, even though that's not my team, you want him to be good. You want him to be as good as advertised, because as our great players age and move out the league, you're always looking for the next group to come in and fill those roles. So I need Desmond Ridder to be an elite quarterback or a very good quarterback. I think the headlines, I don't think they were overblown. He has looked good. He can move with his legs. He looked like he was going through his progressions better. So if you're Atlanta, they do have some weapons around him. I like Bijan Robinson. If that offensive line is as solid as I think it'll be, they're going to have a complementary run game to make things even easier for Desmond Ridder. So I like what they're doing out there. I think Atlanta's going to be better than a lot of us predict. I don't think they're going to win the division, but I think they'll be respectable. With the Giants, it's different. And this is not for Freddie. I don't want to kill Freddie, because I know every time I mention the Giants, it just hurts Freddie's soul. I'll say this, and think about this for a minute. Daniel Jones can have the same exact season he had last year, the same exact season. But if he does, they're not going to make the playoffs. You know what I'm saying? Like, they won a lot of close games. I don't think it works that way in the NFL. Like, when you have one of those cardiac kid seasons when you win a lot of close games because you were able to not turn it over, get turnovers on the other end, and milk it with your run game and win close games. The other way around is you lose those close games. The other way around is they play 8 and 9 men in the box and they stop Saquon Barkley and they say, Daniel Jones, can you beat us with your arm? Because we already know what you can do with your leg. I'm just saying that if I'm a Giants fan, be optimistic, but be concerned, because I'm serious. He's going to have to be better than he was last year. The 15-5 thing, that's not going to be good enough. There's going to have to be a progression. He didn't have to throw for 30 touchdowns, but go 22-5. And I'm sure he's going to run the ball for 600 or 700 yards, because that's still his default. But I don't think it's going to be enough to be what he was last year. He's going to have to be better. They went out and got him some weapons. I like the addition of Waller, a tight end that can attack you vertically. Problem with Waller is, though, he rarely can stay on the field. So that's a question mark. They try to go out and get some more talent on the outside, and that's fine, except Daniel Jones doesn't really throw the ball to the outside. When he does throw the ball, he usually works in the middle. That's his comfort zone. So I think that the Giants have a lot of question marks on offense. A lot of people think they have a chance to win the division. I don't understand that at all. I'm not a Cowboys fan. I'm not. But the Cowboys are going to be better than the Giants. I'm just sorry, Giants fans. They're going to be better than you. It's an empirical fact. They're better than you are up front. Games are won in the trenches. They're better than you are both sides up front. They have more talent than you do on both sides of the ball. They're just going to be better. If Daniel Jones takes a leap, maybe he can get you in contention for a playoff spot, but I don't think 3 teams are coming out that division. Like, we have to assume that the Eagles are going to win the division, right? Barring major injuries, the Eagles win the division. The Cowboys are going to be second. Those are going to be the only 2 teams that come out of that division. Like, you're not going to have 3 teams with 10 or more wins in that division.
It's crazy, because if you just put up Daniel Jones's numbers, so 15 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, he averaged just over 200 yards passing a game, 200.3 yards, sacked 44 times. I'm not quite sure where that adds up last season as far as most sacked, but I'm pretty sure he's in the top half. So if you just put those numbers up, and then you put those numbers with the rest of the numbers of the starting quarterbacks who made the playoffs last season, and you just gave that list to someone, and you were like, who do you think didn't make the playoffs out of here? I think 9 times out of 10, someone's going to look at his numbers and be like, there's no way that's a starting quarterback who played 16 games. I think he missed 1 game last season. So there's no way that's a starting quarterback who played 16 games and brought his team, not with those numbers. That's impossible in the league today. So give credit where credit is due to the Giants, not to Daniel Jones, but to the Giants, because they made it work. They took what they have
100%.
and they found a way to craft a system around him to score enough points on offense, to hold them enough on defense, to win 9 games and get them into a playoff spot.
And he didn't turn the ball over a lot. That's key.
Correct.
He took care of the ball. So you and I had a conversation about Tua, but it was for different reasons. We want Tua to throw the ball away more, but that's for his health. That's for his health. You don't need to hold the ball. It's okay sometimes to go 3 and out. Just throw the ball away. With Daniel Jones, he holds the ball a lot. He holds the ball a long time because he's just not a natural thrower of the football. He wants to take off and run. It's his default. I'm not saying that Daniel Jones can't develop into a top flight quarterback, but what I am saying is that he relies so much on his athleticism. It almost takes us back to the conversation we've already had. I got to give a lot of credit to Coach Brian Daboll and his assistant coaches because they coached him up. They said, Daniel, we're going to make it real basic. We're going to give you 3 reads. And even if you're not comfortable with your first 2 reads, take off. And that's fine. I think that can work, but I don't think that's something that's sustainable because everybody's defense looks at film, they adjust, and they shrink the field, and they take away what you do best. And really what they do best is get the ball to Saquon Barkley.
Keep in mind, Mo, for one season, the Wildcat offense in Miami couldn't be stopped. Couldn't stop it. We brought it out against the New England Patriots. It was the greatest thing the league had ever seen, even though college programs have been running it for 50 years.
Wait a minute. Was that when you had Ricky Williams and Ronnie Harmon?
Yeah, Ronnie Brown. Yep.
I'm sorry, Ronnie Brown. Yeah. I remember that, and nobody could figure it out.
No one could figure it out. But what happens? The league catches up. By the time the Dolphins, I'm pretty sure the Dolphins made the playoffs that year, but they were 1 and done. And by the time you're playing elite defenses and you're going against elite schemes, they figure things out. And I don't know if in 2023 you can get to the playoffs back-to-back years with a quarterback that has the output that Daniel Jones had last season. I just don't know. We'll find out this year because I don't think we're going to see an incredibly different version of Daniel Jones. I mean, in his first season, he threw 24 touchdown passes. So we know he has the ability to get into the mid-20s as far as his touchdown passes go. But also in that first year, he had the most picks that he's ever had in his career with 12. And every year since, his picks have gone down. But also every year since, with the exception, so his picks go from 12 to 10 to 7 to 5, but his touchdowns go from 24 to 11 to 10 to 15. So what does that tell you? Well, what it tells me is that they're taking more off his plate. So when he throws the ball less, he has less opportunities to throw interceptions. When you rely more on the running game, or you rely more on the slant game or the screen game, or those throws that every NFL quarterback should be able to make, 99 out of 100 times, you're taking away the opportunity for the mistakes. But when you take away the opportunity for the mistakes, now your room for error is so much less. And like you said, Mo, they had so much good fortune this past season. Close games went their way. Key turnovers at key times went their way. That doesn't happen every season. So what happens this season when they're in a couple games where they have to go toe-to-toe with an offense? Can Daniel Jones be that? Can he drop back and throw the ball 30, 35 times and lead you to a win? I don't know.
Point. Can they get in a shootout?
Right. And can he not throw picks while doing it? I don't know. He hasn't really had to do that in his career. So I think the Giants need a lot to go right to be in contention for the playoffs. I don't think they're going to win their division because, come on paper, they're not even close to the Eagles. And I would even argue on paper, they're not even that close to the Dallas Cowboys. So people, I get it. You want the best for your team, but there comes a time where you have to be realistic. And I think it's realistic to say the Giants might compete for a playoff spot. I don't think it's realistic to say they're going to come anywhere close to the division.
No, what they need a player that we're not talking about, that we don't see come out of nowhere and give them a big season. Be it on defense with 10 or 15 sacks, or on offense, a wide receiver has a breakout year and catches 90 balls for 1,200 yards and 12. They need a star that we don't see right now for them to compete for a playoff spot.
And Giant fan, if you're sitting here listening to what Mo just said and the name Darren Waller popped into your head, go sit in the corner because he is not that guy. You should be ashamed for thinking he is that guy. You need to knock it off. If you are betting your future this season on Darren Waller being a Kelsey or an Andrews or a healthy Kittle, you need to stop it. You stop it right now, and you need to go think about what you just thought because it's not okay. Mo, I hate that every morning has to come to an end. I wish we could just do this all morning.
I'm having a blast, man. So I'm good. We could just keep going and going. But guess what? On the upside, we're back tomorrow.
We are back tomorrow, same time, same place. Make sure that you are liking our content. Make sure you are subscribing to our social media accounts. Make sure you're following us here on Facebook. If you follow us on Facebook, it will tell you. You'll get a little thing when we go live, so you'll know that a show is happening. What better thing in the world than for social media to tell you when things are happening, all right? So once again, we appreciate everyone who is here. Make sure you are dropping your wide receiver duos in. We want to hear all of the great wide receiver duos that you have. Mo, 15 seconds, closes out.
Appreciate everybody in the chat. Grateful to all of you guys. Appreciate everybody that's watching. Hey, smash that like button, that subscribe button, share it with friends. Let people know where they can come for their coffee and sports in the morning.
Once again, on behalf of Mo and myself, thank you so much for joining us this morning, and we will see you tomorrow for another episode of Coffee and Sports.